You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Welcome to another supplemental episode of Mission Log the Orville. Today we have JP from Talking the Orville and Egotastic FunTime. My name is Mike Richards.
And I'm Jessica Lindberty. Mission Log is a conversation that depends on your participation, so there's multiple ways you can do that. You can go into our comments. If you're watching us on YouTube, let us know what you think about this episode or what you think about JP. You can go to Mission Log Pod on Facebook. You can check out our Mission Log the Orville Instagram account, or you can even email us at missionlog-theorville@roddenberry.com. If you comment, we might use your comment in an upcoming episode, so be nice.
And remember, the Roddenberry Industrial Complex will not be denied.
So, welcome, JP.
Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. Finally being able to talk to you, Jessica.
I know. It hasn't worked. Well, we did meet. We met at the premiere.
Yes, we did.
When you had the wonderful upvote, downvote button.
Yeah, and I was looking for that the other day, and I think it's in the garage. I won't have to go dig it out.
We do. I want it just for my life, but it was very cool. You stuck out in that way, and actually, even Seth was like, "Oh, that's JP over there. I gotta go say hi to him."
Yeah, I didn't hear that part, but I did hear, "Hey, JP," and I look over and there's Seth just coming at me. Hey, and he's talking about, because we just watched the first episode of season 3 on IMAX. So he wanted to know, typical Seth, how the music sounded. If
That's
it was
right.
Too loud or not loud enough.
Exactly what he asked me. So this is great. One of the things that Jessica and I noticed right away when we got involved with the Orville is just how tight the community is and just how collaborative it is. So, you've got your show that if people listen to our show, I'm sure they watch your show too.
I hope so.
But just in case they don't, there's somebody under a rock somewhere. Just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about your background real quick. So, tell us a little about like your sci-fi creds and maybe your fandom that kind of led you into being a YouTuber.
Oh, wow. That is going way back. First off, a lot of people know sometimes I'm the one under the rock. But my YouTube journey, I'll call it a journey. It's something to learn. You learn while you're on the path. It's something I started 10 years ago. And it was with the whole, I'm bored. I don't know what to do with my time. Oh, there's this YouTube thing people are making content for. I originally moved to the middle of the country from Los Angeles, where I was pursuing an acting career. But Los Angeles is very expensive. I finally decided, hey, I got to get out of this place. It's too expensive. It's cheaper in the middle of the country. Let me try that. But after years of being here, I'm like, I miss having some creative juices flowing.
Right.
So I started doing YouTube. For the first couple of years, it was just it's still all just a try to figure things out type of scenario. You're always trying to figure things out. But the first couple of years was just trying to figure out what to put up, what content to put out there. So I just tried every topic I could think of, topic of the week type thing. And then finally I saw that there was a show called The Orville that was, that looked kind of like comedy Star Trek type thing. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. Let me watch that. The first episode came out. I watched it like a week later. I'm like, oh, I think I like this. So let me do a video about that. It was the first video in 2 years, 2 or 3 years of doing YouTube that people actually watched.
Oh, no way.
That's a pained laugh, by the way, just knowing that all too well.
Yeah, you never know what people are going to watch. And then finally someone's watching the thing. I'm like, oh. And then, there was another episode the next week. So I'm like, let me do another episode. A lot more people watched. And so at that point, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm talking about the Orville now. And so, which leads to my channel's name, Talking the Orville, which of course stemmed from, what was it, Talking Dead?
Oh,
right.
That after show from The Walking Dead. I'm like, Talking Dead, Talking the Orville. Why not?
That's why we named it Talking TED, too. Because, TED Talk was also the play.
We were really trying to get a couple of 100 million accidental hits on our shows just from people searching on TED Talks.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I used to think that I was going to be reviewing the TED series as well, back before it came out. And then after a while, I realized, oh, I don't have time for this.
Oh,
I don't have time
wow.
to do it. But I was going to call it, I was all set. I had a playlist ready called Talking Ted for all the same reasons. Talking to Orville, Talking Ted,
That's
TED Talk.
funny.
So I was going to call it that too. The playlist is still in somewhere in my channel. I don't think I ever used it. But for all the same reasons, and I didn't call it TED Talk because I'm like, well, that would probably get me in trouble. Copyrights and all that stuff.
That's
Talking
right.
TED. But I was glad to see that you guys use that name because I'm like, well, that's the perfect name. It's the absolute perfect name. I'm glad you guys were able to use it, even though I was not able to use it.
That's really fun. Yeah, it was in the zeitgeist. It was definitely
Yeah.
like in the ether. Someone just needed to pluck it.
Yeah,
So
so
the-
I'm like, if someone's not using that, there's got to be something wrong with the universe because it's just the perfect name.
Yeah, I was going to use. So the name you also have used in the past. I don't know if you still use it. I think you do. Egotastic FunTime.
Yeah,
Where did
Egotastic
that come
FunTime.
from?
That was, I wanted, having a YouTube channel is having an internet thing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, the internet is crazy. And K-pop was getting really big at the time.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. I'm like, well, amongst my family and friends, I've always been known as being the kind of sarcastic, egotistic type of person, but in a wink and a nod type way.
In a benign way.
Yeah, in a benign way. And so I'm like, well, I want the show, my channel, to be egotistical. I want it to be fantastic, and I want it to be a fun time. And I put it together in the K-pop type of way, Egotastic FunTime, and Egotastic FunTime is now coming back. The Talking the Orville has kind of taken away from the Egotastic FunTime for a while as far as direction goes, but now I have two channels. I have Talking the Orville, which is the new Talking the Orville channel, which is still growing again, and I'm bringing back Egotastic FunTime, which is the big channel. And they're going to be two totally different things.
And the changes you made recently to Talking the Orville, anything that your listeners or our listeners need to know, or can they still kind of find you in the same place? And what was sort of the reason for the change?
If you just type in the Orville, you'll find Talking the Orville. But it helps even more if you just type in Talking the Orville. Talking the Orville is just anything having to do about the Orville. So whether it be, I'm trying to get into doing more shorts, not shorts that are scenes from the Orville, which I've done that before with huge success, except for YouTube doesn't like that. If you want to have a monetized channel, they'll let you do it, but they won't let you monetize.
That's right.
So now I'm doing shorts that have me doing voiceover to explain a scene or a situation, a theory, or anything like that. But also just regular videos. I'm trying to get into having more. I'm starting to experiment with AI to animate some of the things that I create in Photoshop. Instead of just having a still image that I create in Photoshop,
Sure.
have it move around a little bit.
Right.
Be a little bit more interesting to the screen. But Talking to Orville is still going to be, and always will be, the fandom getting together, talking about the show that we love, talking about the universe that we love pretending to be in and loving to watch and learn from. Also, sometimes interviews with the cast and crew, or just crazy theories that I come up with. And then Egotastic FunTime is becoming a dumb internet knowledge comedy channel. It's where I just take something, like I just came off the video. I'm not super happy with the video, but I'm like, I might as well try something. It's called Why is the Sky Blue? And it just talks about why it's the sky blue, but in a crazy way.
I'm gonna check it out. I know. I'm hooked.
Well, hopefully it'll be my. It's an experiment. So I'm trying to get better and better and starting to use AI for that as well.
Now, one of the things that I love about the Orville community, yourself, what Jessica and I do, what PJ does with Orville Nation, it's we all work together, man. We all collaborate because why? We think we all do better when we all do better
together.
What
I added to it.
And
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's really nice to be part of that in a world where, competition is so, kind of forced down our throats so often. And you've invited us as well as a few other people onto a group that we call the Union. Mm-hmm. And why don't you talk about that a little bit and kind of how you came up with that idea and what we've done with it?
Well, it was about a year ago. Well, this whole YouTube experience has been me just being a lone wolf. I never wanted to work with anybody. I just wanted to do things when I wanted to do them and get it done, and not have to worry about other, getting people together and all that.
I quit,
stuff.
Mike.
Yeah, it's perfect. You got
Mike was not aware that was a joke. Sorry.
Yeah. Get some applications out now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you can stay till the end of the day, though.
No, I guess I can make it work. Oh.
All right, perfect. No, I've been a lone wolf this whole time. And then last year, I watching the Orville as I do often, I'm like, you know what, the Orville, they're about working together. They're not about doing everything on your own. I'm like, this is the Orville community is the best fandom out there. I said it, you guys. I said it. If you don't agree with me, that's too
Clutch
bad.
my
It's
pearls.
the truth. Yeah, there you go. It's the best community. I'm like, well, what's community? Community is working together and bringing people together. And there's a lot of other people out there that are loving the Orville and talking about the Orville and have a platform. Let's get together and start talking about the Orville to help fuel the fan base. Because
Let me ask you this question,
Mhm.
just because the problem is we love talking about the Orville, but because it's in between this amorphous, is there going to be a season 4? Is it also born of that? Like, man, I don't know what else to talk about until season 4 comes out. Like, and I mean that lovingly too, but you know what I mean? That's the challenge for us in creating with this particular IP.
Yeah, well, I learned it is tough. I will say, all Orvillians know that you have to be patient, and they've learned patience. Even over the years, I've seen people become more and more patient and less angry about how long it takes, and more excited about eventually there's going to be more. But I think back in season 2, I learned I'll never run out of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Orville. Never, ever, ever. I thought I would. I mean, when I decided to go full Orville all the time with my content and not talk about other fandoms out there, I was like, how am I going to keep talking about the Orville? It's just one thing. How am I going to talk about one thing? And then I just did it. And then I did it over hundreds of times I've done it. And I'm like, I've never run out of stuff to talk about.
That's really interesting as we break down an episode. And, I mean, I know our format of, we do some trivia and then a recap and just lighthearted observations, heavier discussion, and then kind of talk about messages, morals, and meanings at the end of the show. What I started to notice with myself is that I never completed a script. I never completed, one of our design documents for this show. I just ran out of time, because the more you peel back the onion, the deeper you get. Scenes are related, A plot, B plot, C plot, all related. The music is so purposefully selected for this show that I just run out of time and just can't cover everything we want to for each episode that we do.
I didn't think about that, Mike.
Yeah.
How many times did you and I come away after recording something going, I wish I should have talked about that, but we were already in the middle of a conversation we didn't know we were going to have. So that makes a lot of sense, JP.
Yeah, and I do a lot of live shows with the fandom, and they're always talking about stuff that will spark something in my mind. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that.
Right.
And that opens a whole other realm of things to talk about when it comes to the Orville.
And that's why...
Go ahead, Mike. I'm so sorry, please.
No, I was just going to say that's why we kind of have our disclaimer at the beginning of every show. It's like, this is the conversation. Like, we're just starting the conversation. Please let us know what we missed, because we know we just either missed it or didn't have time to talk about it.
That's exactly right. So what I was going to ask is how much of a Star Trek fan were you coming into the Orville?
Oh, huge. I mean, I'm still a huge legacy Star Trek fan. And I enjoy a lot of the newer Star Trek as well. Even though legacy Star Trek is my jam. That's where I feel Star Trek is Star Trek.
It's a cozy, warm blanket for sure.
It is that. I mean, huge. I mean, when it comes to sci-fi, certain tiers of, what's my favorite. Number 1 is probably Twilight Zone. Number 2 is classic and legacy Star Trek. And now number 3 is probably the Orville, but of course the Orville takes precedent over everything online. But what's great about the Orville is Star Trek and Twilight Zone both play a role in that world, because there's so many influences of all sci-fi inside of the Orville that you could just make it your number one, and you're still going to get a little piece of all the other sci-fi. That you
That's
love
a really
out there.
good point.
Yeah, that's what Brandon said when we interviewed him, and nobody else has been shy about it, is that they wanted to tell those, those quick morality tales like the Twilight Zone and like Star Trek, the original series, and Next Gen. And I mean, if you don't see a direct line between People Are the Same All Over and Command Performance and how those zoo scenes are shot, go back and check out People Are Alike All Over from the Twilight Zone, because it's almost a shot for shot homage as they let you know that you're in a menagerie.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, in my review of Command Performance all those years ago, I had a whole segment all about People Are Alike All Over in the comparison of the two, because that's the first thing. As soon as I saw they were inside of a zoo and there were the humans inside of the zoo in that episode, I was like, oh, that's the Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
And if you go through the Orville, the whole thing, you'll see lots of little Twilight Zone moments, what if moments. What if there was a world where everybody lived their lives according to astrology or a social media news feed? That's all Twilight Zone-esque type things. The Orville is basically all sci-fi with a Star Trek avatar, basically.
Yeah.
Which is why it works.
Yeah.
Why it's so good. Because to exactly our point earlier, so I'm starting to watch Voyager. I had never watched Voyager. I hardly knew it existed up until 5 years ago. But it is a warm blanket, even though I've never watched it, because it is just this procedural TV that is just, on top of just Janeway being the absolute best, but it's so comforting. And then you go to watch the Orville, and Seth really proves you can do trick like that now. It doesn't need to be this new lens flary battles in space thing. And Mike and I talked about this our last recording. You don't need to detract from the new Trek to complement the Orville, but I don't think that they have the vision of translating older Trek into today's lens, and Seth did that seamlessly. I think.
Yeah, he did. Like new Star Trek, which a lot of it is I really like it, but it isn't the old Star Trek. It's more like a Star Wars action scene.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's a certain audience for that. But the Orville is classic sci-fi, but in modern for our modern audience. I call it Classico Nuevo sci-fi. Ooh. And it's the classic vibe, but it's totally updated and
You're good at
today's
names.
Audience.
You're good at names.
That's all I sit here and think about names.
Yeah, one of the things that it does do well is that while it keeps a largely episodic format and has those, almost a sci-fi vibe that an anthology series would have, it also adds a rather modern day spin on character development to that also, so that we're invested in Claire's relationship with Isaac. We're invested in what's going on with Bortus, Clyden, and Topa. And we're invested in Ed and Kelly. And that's something that didn't happen, at least definitely not in the original series. Minimally in Next Gen, and didn't really get into that much more until we got into Deep Space Nine. Of course, Deep Space Nine, while I think it's a fantastic series and possibly my favorite of that Berman era, did sort of let go of that idealistic vision in a lot of ways that the earlier series had. So, you win some, you lose some. But I think there's a sweet spot, and I think the Orville's kind of hitting it.
Oh, totally hitting it. Talking about classic Star Trek, it's not as classic. I still consider it legacy. Enterprise. If you go watch Enterprise, you are going to see a lot of things in their plots and their stories that also happen on the Orville. And you're like, oh. So I've always considered the Orville to be, even though it's not visually the same, it's the torchbearer for Enterprise. And of course, Seth MacFarlane he played a character in a couple episodes of
David
Enterprise.
Goodman wrote on it. And
Ensign Rivers, Brandon Braga wrote almost every episode of it.
Yeah.
You can really, really see that. That's a great point. Enterprise holds up incredibly well. If you go back and watch that series today, it's high def, it's widescreen. It I mean, 20 years later, it holds up very, very well.
Why is the Voyager TV quality so bad?
The
Do
way
you know
it
what I'm
was
talking
filmed,
about?
they were able to upgrade the original series and the Next Generation into more high def.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Something. Anyway, they were able to remaster those two series because they were filmed on film, I think. But I think Voyager and Deep Space Nine were filmed maybe on some other format, and that they're not able to upgrade.
My understanding of the effort to remaster the Next Generation was that it was very expensive and it lost a bunch of money, and that they could have done at least Deep Space Nine. And the documentary, What We Left Behind, that was produced by 455, that showed some high def widescreen scenes that they just looked beautiful.
Wow.
But just the commitment wasn't there to do them after Next Gen. Now, I would imagine that by the time you get to Voyager, things might have been getting filmed differently at that point, to where it didn't capture it. But what you can do on film and what they can recover from film, the folks that remastered the motion picture, Star Trek the Motion Picture, said they found so much information on this original celluloid film that they could go back and they could not only colorize black and white film from before that, they can make 3D out of it. They can get it up to about a 20K resolution. Like, it is incredible what was captured on that medium.
Wow.
Yeah. Voyager is my second favorite Star Trek because it's all about adventure again in space. So like Deep Space Nine, I liked it, but it wasn't quite my thing. And then Voyager showed up. I'm like, oh, a ship out in space having adventures again. You never know what you're gonna find. I love it. But now trying to rewatch it, I'm like, oh, I am so spoiled. I need it to be a higher.
It's a rough. That's what I'm saying. It's a rough watch. And then I watched Sub Rosa because our friends over at Greatest Generation did a live show out in in Wisconsin, Madison. And so I had to watch Sub Rosa. I know about it. I knew about it. I had never watched it. Yeah. And jumping from watching Voyager to this incredibly high def version of her having sex with the green ghost candle was kind of jarring. And it really made me upset that there wasn't a better resolution of, Kate Mulgrew being just a badass. Now, just kind of shifting gears a little bit, as we know, we kind of think season 4 is a bit an eventuality. I think it's common knowledge that we won't be joining them exactly where we left them. We'll probably be joining them in the future. 5 years later,
400 years in the future.
Maybe. I mean,
for
like
us.
that's God. I know it's painful, this whole new era of television. But what do you think we'll see in the next season of the Orville? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I have nothing but thoughts on
Let's
that.
go.
I think about it every single day.
Great.
Well, I do know that we were supposed to get the lost episode for the season 3 that they weren't able to film because of COVID.
Right.
Sympathy for the
Devil. Yeah. Great story. Probably my favorite Orville story.
That story sticks with me.
Yeah.
It really does.
It was
a
so
hardcore
good.
Twilight Zone type episode.
Yeah. And we got a chance to chat with Bruce Boxleitner. Remember Jess at the
yeah.
Saturn Awards? And he was, oh my God, what a class act. And what a phenomenal, just
so highly of
humble,
Seth
eloquent,
and,
just articulate. It was great. There was a book one of the books that Seth posted on his Twitter feed, and I know I have it around here somewhere, but there was a chapter in it called Empathy for the Devil. And it was basically twin brothers born in Germany. One of them immigrated to the United States. One of them stayed in Germany. They both fought for opposite sides, right, during World War II. Both for their countries, where they lived. Which one's the bad guy? Which one's the good guy? Which one's the bad guy? Is one a good guy? Is one a bad guy? And I kind of, since Seth shared that book on his Twitter feed, I kind of feel like that was the genesis of that idea.
Oh, yeah. It totally sounds like it because the plot is definitely like the theory of nature over nurture.
Right.
How does your surroundings affect the way you end up as a person? I don't want to give away the story because you got to check it out. Sympathy for the Devil.
And then you got to check out our coverage of it on Mission Log, the Orville.
That's right. I've done videos about it before, but I plan on doing a new video about it eventually. But
So
there's
we
a
asked-
long list of videos.
We asked Bruce, we were like, so was this your first, episode or first experience doing an audiobook? And he was like, oh, I go back to books on tape. Remember books on tape? I did that then. And we're just like, we're really sorry. we should have known better.
What did you say? Did you do books on 8-track?
That's a better question, Jamie.
But the interesting part was we kind of finished the interview. It was awesome. I loved chatting with him. And then he moved on. And then he actually came back. He kind of came upstream again on the red carpet a little bit and said, hey, can I talk to you guys a little bit more about Seth and how much he loves doing the show and what it means to him? And I was just like, holy cow, man, absolutely. So we chatted again for a few minutes. Just amazing experience.
I got to release that. It keeps on going further and further down the pipe, but Mike did all these you got to interview Nick Cage, you got to interview James Cameron. It was a really, really crazy, it was a really interesting day, and Mike was just killing it. But also we were like wading 3 inches deep in water. All of it was
Wow.
Like throwing elbows at KTLA 5, and it was a wild experience at the Saturn Awards.
Yeah, we had KTLA on one side, Screen Rant on another. Pretty much we had enough room to get like an iPad or an iPhone like in between the crowd and
just
talk.
stick it out there and see what you can get.
Here's the thing. Mike has not seen me in this condition before, but I was miserable. I was so upset at the situation. And so I shut down. I was like, you just do the interviews. I got this. I'm going to record. And it was a tough day for me.
Why are all these other people here? I thought this was about us.
Well, they were fighting me too. And Mike got to see me in rare form, like really stand my ground. Don't talk to me like that. Don't put,
That's how you got to be.
Well, you kind of do. And the thing is, I even said to one of the guys is like, this could have gone differently if you had just said, hi, can you share space with me?
Yeah.
And then he even did come back, goes, I am sorry. But at the same time, I'm like, why do I care? Why do I care about my small little piece of earth?
Anyway. You have to care, because if you don't care, no one else is going to care for you. So you have to do it. You have to stake your claim.
I did. And
especially out in those events. What was that? West Coast, right? It's at KTLA.
Everyone was so sharky. It was, and also it was poorly run. I'm just saying it was poorly run. There wasn't any. Everyone's like, oh, now KTLA 5 is here. Move everybody.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Well, like I said, it'd be a lot easier if they did some of these events in the middle of the country. People are a little bit nicer. One of the first things I learned when I moved here, I'm like, you go to a concert, be in the front row. If you have to use the restroom and leave to use the restroom, your spot is saved for you when you come back.
Aww.
Yeah.
People are nice. They'll let you right back to where you were. In LA, it wasn't like that.
It's not like that.
No.
Well, the only other thing that turned me off from that event are like the people that I'm realizing that fans aren't the ones that are at those events just hoping to see the people they like. It's the people that want them to sign things so that they can then sell those things. Yeah. And so they're barking at the celebrities, and it is it feels dystopian. It's just a very weird experience.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
one of the neatest things that happened with that was Will Wheaton came walking up, and I was like, Will, Mike Richards, Roddenberry Entertainment. And he just goes, family.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
I
Safe
love
space.
family.
Yeah.
It just gave me a hug, and I was just like, oh my God.
It was very sweet.
Well, I'm anybody that's in front of the camera that is known out there, has any little bit of celebrity, knows what it's like, that there are just people out there to get something from you. So when they find a safe space, they find family, they're very appreciative of it.
That's a really, really great point.
It's a good point.
So
Man,
let's
really
get back to what do you want from the Orville?
I just want Seth to do exactly what Seth wants to do, and I think that's exactly what we're going to get in season 4. I do think that he is, because he's a busy guy. We know he's a busy guy. And I've been saying it for years. I'm like, dude, you need to loosen the reins a little bit and let some of the rest of your team, which you've trained very well to be as passionate about this product as you are, to have some of takes a little bit more of the workload. Because that's doing everything. I mean, producing, directing, writing, starring in, he probably picks up coffee for everybody before he shows up on set. So I've been like, okay, writing, you need to let the rest of the writing team do a little bit more.
Well,
And I think a lot of people are so worried that he's not going to be playing Ed full time. And I'm like, no, if he's letting other people do a little bit more of the directing and the writing, all stuff, he'll have more time to play Ed Mercer full time and still have time to do other projects that he's working on.
So let me ask you if you have some insight to this, because this is a question that I've asked multiple times and never really got an answer for. You watched an episode of The Orville, written by Seth MacFarlane, written by Brandon and Andre, very prolific writing. I think they wrote 4 or 5 episodes of New Horizons, written by Sherry Shiva, written by Joe Manoski, wrote Sanctuary. So we have these episodes with singular writing credits. But I get the idea that that's may or may not be how things are really working behind the scenes.
I've had that same feeling. I think about that. I've thought about that often. And I think, as Adrian Palicki said, Seth writes everything. And then there's a lot of research that I've done about an episode that was written by somebody else, but Seth would come in and rework it, almost all of it in a lot of cases. So I've always thought that the people that you see that are the writers that are given the credit, they've written the base, the main part of the episode, but that Seth has gone in and Sethified it a little bit or a lot. I mean, I remember when I interviewed him about the episode Mortality Paradox, and we were talking and we're getting into the story and all stuff. We're having a great time. And then I mentioned it was written by Sherry, who I appreciate that you didn't try to pronounce her entire last name.
Sherry Shiva Pravat Dumrong.
Oh my gosh. I have not been able to do that.
It's like you got to practice it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to call it Sherry. That's my sister's name. I like that name.
Before Fire, the episode one's Alara Katan episode. I practiced that quite a bit for our coverage for it.
Yeah, I've tried to interview her back after that episode came out, but I interviewed someone else. I can't remember who I interviewed instead, but I didn't interview her. But I was trying to practice it, and then I realized, I'm not going to be able to interview her, so I stopped my journey right there.
But so you guys were talking about Mortality Paradox.
So we're talking about Mortality Paradox. So we're really both excited about talking about the story, and I've already heard from Scott Grimes about the different fears from that episode, that Seth just had different fears, so I put those fears in the episode. But then I saw the episode was written by her, but then we're talking about it, and I said, it's written by Sherry, and there was a little bit of a pause from him. This is all assumption, by the way. I don't know anything as a fact. There's a little bit of pause, and then he's like, oh, yeah. And I was thinking, that's kind of weird. Did she not write it fully? But I didn't bring that up because I don't care. That's their business, not mine.
The important thing about Mortality Paradox, the one where everybody was afraid of things, is I don't like clowns.
Oh yeah, Firestorm.
That was the name of the one I was trying to think of.
Firestorm.
Yeah,
I don't like clowns, and that was another thing that had fears that Seth had that he put into the characters. And then also I liked in Mortality Paradox, basically there was a fear of a plane going down.
Right.
Which is exactly a fear of Seth's, because he was supposed to be on one of the planes that flew into the towers of 9/11.
Yeah, he was supposed to be on the flight that departed Boston.
Yeah, so he doesn't like flying. And so he put that in there. So it's very interesting. The more you know about Seth, the more you understand things that happen in the Orville.
That's exactly right. When we interviewed Georgia Wiggum about Ted, she shared that him and Seth had talked about the Watcher in the Woods, and then that ends up being in Ted. Yeah. It's, it really is the old adage of like writing what you know.
Well, real quick, you mentioned Georgia Wiggum. I plan on seeing her a lot more in season 4 of the Orville.
I think that's right.
There's a lot of crossover between Ted and the Orville.
Yeah, there sure is.
Which is why it made sense for us to cover it. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, it sure did. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to see Georgia more. I think we will. I think that was the plan at the end of season 3. But what's next for you with your channel, with your shows? We talked a little bit about it, but let's give our listeners and your listeners, who hopefully will be watching this too, a chance to see what's next, hear what's next from you.
Well, I got a lot going on in my life right now. YouTube has thrown me for a loop over the years, and finally I realized, hey, I need to calm down with expecting anything from YouTube, the platform, and get my life together so that I can create better stuff. So I've been working on that the last few months so that I can come back, which I've already started, so that we can hit harder when it comes to talking the Orville and put up higher quality videos, a little bit more documentary style, and a lot more live shows. We're also we still have 2 more live shows of the Orville RPG game that we've been playing on my channel once a month. And then we'll do 2 more episodes of that. We've been doing it most of the year. And then after that, we'll regroup and see if we want to do more later on next year, 2025, which is coming up. So it's just going to be a lot of Orville because we have a new season of the Orville, which I know is been picked up for a 4th season.
Oh yeah, we've been told that point blank.
Yeah.
Question. All right, so when that does get picked up, are we going to see you either as an extra, or I didn't know you had an acting background also, or are you going to get a role in season 4? Because we know you have the hookup.
That's up to Seth. I'm not auditioning for anything. I decided a year or 2 ago that my main focus of talking the Orville is just to support the fandom, which then in turn will support the show. So to bring the fandom together, I thought people would be stopped tuning in long time ago. But the fandom always shows up because they love talking about the show. And we never know where our conversations will end up. We start on the Orville, and who knows where it goes off to. But for me, it's just all about supporting the show by supporting the fandom. And then also trying to do my Egotastic FunTime thing as well. Which that's a whole other to-do.
Well, we cannot thank you enough for coming in and chatting with us today. And every time I get a chance to come on and be part of the union, that is an absolute blast. Sitting
also
down with
coming
you.
back, the union.
I will be joining. I will make a point to join
because we have good conversations as the union. We got a lot of people excited about the Orville, not only on the screen but in the chat box as well. So it's always a good time.
And we've got something we probably got to talk about before the show ends, and that's our Master Replicas Giveaway, facilitated by Mr. Ben Robinson from Master Replicas. 5 models created by Master Replicas, including the upcoming release of the Pterodon that we saw everybody acknowledging their instructions in
Remember
the
when we
Domino?
saw the actual
we
Pterodon?
did, yeah, at the cocktail party at the season 3.
I put my hands on it and everything.
Literally too cool. Too cool.
That was cool. And what I realized was I could never be a Pterodon pilot because I think you'd have to stuff me into that thing like a marshmallow into a piggy bank.
Oh yeah,
but the model is still incredibly cool, and getting to see Gordon and I believe John Lamar flew it in the episode Domino as well. When they all did their acknowledged thing.
Yeah. I got my tour of the Pterodon from Brandon Fayette, so he was excited. He created the Pterodon, so he was excited to show it off as much as I was excited to learn all about it.
Oh, in our supplemental supplemental episode, he held up the 3D print of it that had been taped together, and I think he said Bruce Willis broke it, which is like the most Bruce Willis thing I've ever heard.
Classic Bruce.
I just want to put it out there that before it's too late, us as a nation need to make a video for Bruce Willis and tell him how much we love and appreciate that man.
100%.
I just don't think he knows how much we care, and we need to someone needs to play it for him. Someone needs to spearhead this. I can't, but it needs to be done because that man is special, and he needs to know that we feel that way.
That sounds like
miss him.
That sounds like a job for Egotastic FunTime.
Oh yeah, Bruce Willis time. We're gonna go all the way back to Moonlighting.
Yes,
and talk about that. 'Cause
100%.
That's where it started for me.
I mean, didn't he even do a porn? Like, good for that guy.
Yeah,
you know?
it didn't start there for me, but
No,
it did
but-
start with moonlighting.
That's fair. All right. Well, JP, thank you so much for joining us. We want to thank our audience for joining us too. There's going to be links to where they can be sure to connect with you in our liner notes for the podcast and the YouTube. We'll be sure to share it large and widely for you. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, technical production by the infamous Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to connect and comment is podcasts.roddenberry.com.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.